You ready to get down to business? Today we're going to be talking about comedy. Ready? So, have you ever been to, like, say, a barbecue or maybe a swim party, something where like you and all your friends are hanging out, or a slumber party, and like everybody is laughing and having so much fun, but then you go to try and reenact and tell the stories, but you cannot think of what exactly was so funny. It doesn't sound the same. It's like a you had to be there moment. You ever have those? Well, the reason why is because the magic is in the moment. I want to read to you a little blurb from one of my favorite acting books, Truth in Comedy. Great read in case you need something to do. Everyone who has ever performed comedy has their own definite ideas about how to be funny. But the simplest and most basic concept may also be the most effective. The truth is funny. Honest discovery, observation, and reactions are better than contrived invention. After all, we're the funniest when we're just being ourselves. Did you hear that? The truth is funny. There's nothing funnier than the truth. So, did you know that laughter is good medicine? You've heard that, right? Did you know that's in the Bible? It goes like this: a cheerful heart is good medicine. Right? What is a cheerful heart? It's like that lightheartedness, not taking life too seriously. That's something we need to not do. We need to not take ourselves too seriously. We need to be able to laugh at ourselves. Now, that doesn't mean that I want you to break character and then suddenly laugh at yourself on stage. That is a big no-no, by the way. You never, ever want to laugh at yourself when you're telling a joke. You don't do it. You would never like see Steve Martin telling a joke and then laugh at himself or laugh at his joke. But there is that ability to laugh at oneself, because otherwise you would be too inhibited and afraid to do it. It's said that to have a sense of humor is to have an understanding of human suffering, right? So it's really important that you understand that when you are having a sense of humor, that doesn't mean that you're laughing at yourself on stage, right? To have a sense of humor really is like that you can laugh, that you can see that funny side, that you can find the humor in it, because in the humor there's humanity, and where that humanity lies is that connection piece. And when you can connect with your audience, they're going to laugh at the things that are funny. That laughter is going to draw them in. It's going to connect them with you. There's going to be that connectiveness moment. And have you ever been in a theater and everybody's laughing at once, and it's like you're there with all these friends, but really they're all strangers? That's what comedy does. It brings people together. There's that relatableness. And that's what comedy is. It's like that I can relate to that truth. Have you ever laughed at somebody because they fell down? I'm a laugher when people get hurt and fall down. I don't need to be, but did you know that I'm like one of the klutziest people? So I can totally laugh because I've done the same thing, right? And so my thinking is like, if you are a laugher when people fall down, maybe it's because you fall down sometimes too. And so you can relate to that. I want you to think about sitcoms. Do you know what that is? It's like they used to have shows like Seinfeld and Friends, Full House. They still have that. It's just redone. But shows like that have a series, like binging through like Netflix and watching it over and over, like, oh, I'm hooked. And the ones that are funny are the sitcoms, right? But what happens in that is they have these truths that are happening that just happen to be funny circumstances, and you can relate to those. And there's something really neat that happens when you're telling a story and a listener is going through all of the same different kind of stimuli as if they were having that experience. And that's what happens that makes it relatable, because you and I, as actors and actresses, are storytellers, right? And we're leading that audience on a journey. with our words, our emotions, and our commitment to character. And that's the thing, you got to be committed to the truth of that character. Don't you forget that. You have to be committed to the truth of that character. And that means you got to let go of your ego, all right? Let go of your ego. Because if you don't let go of your ego, you're going to be inhibited by that. You're going to be afraid and you're not going to commit. Let go of your ego. Don't worry if they're laughing at you. That's actually a good thing. There's nothing funnier than the truth. And you need to let go of your ego. So you don't start laughing because you're telling the truth. And sometimes the truth hurts. And sometimes those truths are what is funny. There are different types of comedy, right? And we're going to get into that in a minute. But in that, there's practice. And so people who, like Steve Martin, Jerry Seinfeld, these people did not just become like funny overnight. I mean, they probably actually were pretty funny. But like, it was hours and hours of practice and trial and error. And so you have to practice. Again, let go of the ego. Did you know Jerry Seinfeld is well known for having written a joke every day? Like he'd have a big calendar and be like, okay, writing a joke. Like every day he had to cross off that he did that one thing. What was the one thing that could make the difference for him every day? Tell one joke, write one joke a day, one joke a day, one joke a day. What happens if you write 30 jokes a day? My friends, you've got a notebook full of jokes, right? And so that's practice, practice, practice. If there's something that you want to get better at, you need to throw yourself into it. You need to practice and not accept excuses. There's timing. Timing in comedy is another thing that's important to know about. And that's something that kind of comes from practice. But I want you to know that the best comedians are fantastic improvisers, and they have they're on it with their timing. There is a timing that they go slow. They don't quickly tell their jokes. They take the time. They take the pauses. All right. So, for example, I'm going to give you a story that really happened to me. So I was at a summer camp, and there was a director there. His name was Alan Rafkin, and he was an old-time director, and he directed things like, you won't know about these because you weren't born yet. But you might know. There is this show called MASH. He was the director of that. He directed the Andy Griffith Show. And I'm about the age you are now, and I raise up my hand because I want to be remembered. And I'm like, oh, goodness, I got to think of a funny something. I got to think of something to be remembered, and maybe this guy will put me in a movie, right? Silly thinking. But like, those are the thoughts that go through your head sometimes, right? So I'm raising my hand up, and he calls on me. And I'm like, what is my question going to be? And I say, how do you become famous? You know what he does? He drops his water. Everybody laughs. And I'm thinking, he did not answer my question. It wasn't until years later that I figured out the answers. And so here are some of those answers. One, not that I want you to use this to become famous, okay? But one, you be remembered. How do you be remembered? Just like that. He had the timing. He did something rememberable. Nobody will ever forget that moment. They won't remember why he did it, but they'll remember that moment of him dropping his water for no apparent reason, right? And so, did he laugh at himself when he did it? No, he stayed in character. And he's a director talking to a bunch of acting kids. So you got to trust the timing. And acting on stage, and say you're like more clown-ish comedy, you want gestures that are big. And remember, when you're on film, you want smaller gestures. You don't need to do a lot. In film and on stage, you can do the mannerisms, right? What are those things that captures the essence of that character? Because sometimes a character could have a funny mannerism. Like maybe they do this every so often when they talk. And if you stay true to this character the whole time, it might be really funny. I don't know. Or it might be gross or annoying. Did you see that bird? Did you catch that game last night? Might not have been funny, but that was an example of a mannerism. But the thing is you don't laugh at it. There's several different types of comedy. Some of those are slapstick. Have you heard of that one before? It's definitely like, like, you know, that knee slapper kind of comedy. I think of Charlie Chaplin, and he was more of a physical comedy, but like, let's see, slapstick is a style of humor involving exaggerated physical activity that exceeds the normal boundaries of like what would be physically possible. Slapstick in comedy involves both intentional violence and violence by mishap, often resulting from an inept use of props such as saws or ladders. Like, does this sound like Wile E. Coyote to you? Vaudeville is something really made famous by Lucille Ball. She had a sitcom called I Love Lucy. Have you heard of that show? It's one of my favorites. She is hilarious. She commits to her character. She commits to the truth of the character, and she lays down her ego, right? I mean, who else do you know that would get chocolate all over their face? Or any of the other crazy things that she does. Vaudeville is a theatrical genre of variety entertainment. Born in France at the end of the 19th century, a vaudeville was originally a comedy without psychological or moral intentions, based on a comical situation. A kind of dramatic composition of light poetry, intercepted with songs or ballets. Have you ever heard of comedy dell'arte? All right, this is important. Listen up. This style of theater is less well known, but was an important influence for Shakespeare, Moliere, vaudeville, improv, and more. Commedia dell'arte was an early form of professional theater, originating in Italy. It was popular in Europe from the 16th to the 18th century, and is based heavily in physical comedy. Remember, we were talking about Charlie Chaplin? It's believed to be the first entirely professional form of theater. I want you to have the foundations. I want you to know that there's lots of different types of comedy. A farce. A farce is a comedy that aims at entertaining the audience through situations that are highly exaggerated, extravagant, and thus improbable. Yet you relate. Why do you relate? Because it's a story and they are telling the truth of that story, right? A farce is also characterized by physical humor, the use of deliberate absurdity and nonsense, or broadly stylized performances. The comedy of manners is a type of comedy that looks at the society and kind of pokes fun at the things that society believes at that point in time. And it questions the societal standards. Screwball comedy is a subgenre of the romantic comedy that became popular during the Great Depression, originating in the early 1930s and 1940s. It's widely known for satirizing the traditional love story. Okay, so it's like a satire of a traditional love story. So, all right, then there's romantic comedies, there's parodies, there's satires, and I think I might have left some out because I'm not going to give you a dictionary of everything that's out there, but there are so many types of comedy. But what do they all have in common? Truth and comedy. Before we go, I want you to remember the magic is in the moment, right? And that is important to you because the truth is what's funny, and you're letting go of your ego. And if you're letting go of your ego and knowing that the truth is what's funny, you're not going to laugh and break character, but you're going to stay true to your character, and you're going to be in the moment because there's magic in the moment, right? And now this is important because improv is a form of comedy, and improv is a tool that we can use to make our scenes and stories and our backstory and everything we do in acting even better, right? It can bring another layers and layers and layers. And so one of the things I love to do with my actors is I love to get you memorized off book and then doing it improv. You don't even have to stick to the lines. We're just playing around and we improv together. You need to trust the timing and the magic that's going to happen in the moment. You don't force it. It just does it on its own. And what's great is once you're off book and we get to play with it, there's some magic that happens in the moment. Whether we keep them or don't keep them, is it really brings our group together. And so whatever that group is, the more work they do together, the more they just bond together because they're laughing together and having fun and really committing to their characters, the more fun it ends up being. As Steve Martin says, comedy is not pretty. Just let it happen. A truly funny scene is not the result of someone trying to steal laughs at the expense of his partner, but of generosity, of trying to make the other person and his ideas look as good as possible. Real humor does not come from sacrificing the reality of the moment. You got to stay true to that moment in order to crack a cheap joke, but in finding the joke in the reality of the moment. Simply put, in comedy, honesty is the best policy.